So to kick it off and continue on with our discussion regarding some of the food sovereignty codes and work that are going on in tribal communities across the country, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, and that's Buck Jones. Buck Jones is the salmon marketing specialist at the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. It's a multi-decade he's a multi-decade Columbia River treaty fisherman, and Buck has done various duties including harvesting, processing, and marketing of tribally caught salmon. So with that, please welcome Buck Jones up to the stage.
Good morning. Let's see where I'm at. Yeah, I'm here to speak on our Columbia River Treaty food safety modernization recommendations and model tribal processing codes. So since time immemorial, our members along the Columbia Basin have fished and exercised the right to harvest fish. We manage their resource, using our traditional wisdom and our knowledge passed down from generations. Right now we got about 600 tribal fishermen that have treaty fishing rights along the river. Salmon is a staple of our life. It's a first foods. It's the foundation of our culture and our economy. It has been throughout our years. It's also important part of our religion. One of the first things that we have in the ceremonies is a first salmon feast. That when the salmon comes back, we have those feasts and in recognition of the salmon coming back to provide for our people. It's we honor in the longhouse with the washout services that it starts out with water, and we bless the first foods, the salmon when it comes back. It's it's an important part of me being on a policy. This was policy that was being set, for generations for our people. It is, it's that continues on with the religion that is for our tribal people, and it connects us with the land and the culture that was practiced by our ancestors and continue on today. So just a little bit of background, I wanted to kind of talk about that because I think it's important, that we honor the fishing. And granted, it is a commerce for our people, but it's more important that it is a religious part of our people, as told by an elder before, and people that if the salmon don't come back, we as people, we won't be there, So this is the 4 tribes that Cryptic or Columbia River represents. It's the Warm Springs and Umatilla, Cayuse, Umatilla, and that's what the tribe I'm enrolled in, and the Nez Perce in Idaho, and then Yakima Nation. So in the 1855s, treaties were signed with our tribes along the Columbia Basin tribes, and it was granted to us. The lands that we ceded, we gave away the lands, but we didn't give up our right to fishing. And I think that's something that was very important in the treaty signing, that we was allowed to fish at our and gather and hunt at our usual and accustomed spots or whatever. And so the Columbia River not being on one of the reses is a usual and accustomed spot. So we I just think about that our ancestors that signed those, they wouldn't sign them without having that right. And so I think that's very important that that when they signed those, because they've stood up in laws, in treaty laws to reserve that right for fishing. And it's been some battles, and there's been some battles with that. But so this is Celilo Falls. It was one of a commerce entities of our people for generations throughout the years. It is then in the 1930s they started putting dams on the Columbia River, and it actually, one of the sad points in history is that in the late 50s, 1957, they put up the Dalles Dam. So it covered that now. So you can go there now and you won't see it like this. But I think it was a sad time in our history, because this was a great marketplace for other tribes to come and trade from the Pacific Coast, from the Midwest, and they would gather at times when the salmon came. So it was a really kind of a when they got covered, we had elders crying because it's never going to be that way again. So this is the organization I work for. Like I said, we represent the four treaty tribes that have treaty fishing rights along the river. So it was formed in the late 70s or whatever, because the tribes have been going to battle against with court cases, and they just didn't have the time and the resources to go battle against these court cases that were out there. There was some landmark decisions that really helped us with our fishing, and so they formed with the members of the tribes to form the Columbia River CRIFTIC. And so right now we employ probably about 100 and some people in our main office in Portland. We also got our own enforcement, which patrols along the river. And then we also got our own genetics lab in southeastern Idaho. As Colby had mentioned, I'm a salmon marketing person, but I think I just kind of landed here at the right time, because the work that we've been doing to kind of form these policies, our people have been doing for since time immemorial, and the groups that in the late 90s we actually formed my role, the salmon marketing position, because we had found out that during our commercial season there'd be wholesale buyers there, and there would be limited number of those, and it just might start out like $1, $2 a pound, if that. And then as the season went on, that product that was $1 or $2 a pound in the wholesale, it dropped down to 25 cents. So our commissioner says, well, we see that same fish in the market, and it's like, $15 to $18 a pound. Where are we going with this? How come we're not getting that? So they developed the role that I'm in, salmon marketing. And in doing that, we kind of had to change our perception of that fish or whatever. Because at that time, we wasn't, probably wasn't handling it right and stuff like that. So we start doing some quality handling classes for our fishers, and we start doing seafood Hasip. We start doing providing seafood Hasip for our fishers. Starting in the 90s, we would get experts in food safety to come do that, and this started out, and we was kind of getting hesitancy like that. Well, we've been handling our fish since time immemorial, and we know what we're doing, and it is true or whatever. But to get that quality and that price up for our tribal fishermen, we needed to do something. So we started developing these Hasip programs, because it improves the handling to minimize the bruising. We don't throw our fish, and so the bruises, so it has market value. We reduced our time. We start getting ice on our boats and ice in our fish, so that it was a quality product as we developed. And throughout the years, some laws have changed and stuff like that, and we've advanced with those laws. One of them being, the Food Safety Modernization Act. It actually is it actually started from the Cosmetic Act in the 30s, but in 2010 it became public law, and it was to prevent food safety problems as they occur. I'm not the FISMA expert, and Janie and Colby and them. helped develop some stuff with that. So we started seeing that it was important that we kind of stay ahead of the ball game or whatever, because as somebody had told me at Cryptic, we like to be at the bow of the boat instead of being pulled behind it. So we started working on this in 2015. We got a grant actually through First Nations, but through the Seeds of Native Health, to help us work on our FISMA recommendations and our food code models. And then we parlayed that with the USDA Rural Business Development Grant and start working on FISMA recommendations. And this, what I got here is a handbook that we provide for our tribal fishers that has just some boat safety stuff, some quality handling information. It's got sanitation plans in there that they can write. And this is, I think, our 8th edition. So we've put out like 7 previous editions on that. And it is kind of like a guideline for our fishers to navigate through these laws. Because as we know, we are sovereign. We're sovereign on our reservations. Our food, our salmon, if it was on the reservation, we would be fine. We wouldn't have to worry about the feds and the counties and the states. But this food's in the food chain, and it's going, throughout America and some parts of, other countries. And so we just feel that we had to get these recommendations. And so we worked on with a cryptic group, food safety group, developed a food safety group, and got food safety experts and, of course, legal counsel to help us develop these recommendations. It was through a series of meetings that we did this. We thought we would be as a proactive and try to stay ahead of that. And so we can, some of the main regulatories that we affect us for the commercial fishery is registration, good manufacturing practices, labeling, record keeping, and traceability, and inspections and enforcement of our fishing. So some of the recommendations that we came up with is that, and maybe something I should say is that Cryptic is actually a technical and advisory arm of the 4 tribes that we represent. So we can advise and we can give advice, but it's up to the tribes to set the fishing seasons. We have people at the table because it's a well-managed fishery, so that we have sustainability. So we'll have meetings with the state, and Cryptic will be there, and there'll be tribes members there, but along with the Cryptic staff and the fishery staffs at the 4-member tribes, we're probably the largest employer of fishery staff in the Columbia Basin. That being said, our recommendations, we thought that the tribe should enact food codes, food safety codes for commercial fishing that reflect the federal policies but are specific to the tribes and their practices. Another one was negotiate agreements with the IHS or the FDA to conduct inspections under FISMA. That's kind of an ongoing thing right now because the IHS has been a partner with us previously and stuff, but it's kind of going on. The Office of Environmental Health is in a transition to, I think, be taken over by the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board under 638 contract. So that's been an ongoing process. And that being said, we wanted to coordinate with the IHS for the training of our tribal fishers, inspection staff, and law enforcement officers to do these inspections so that it's not the feds or the state or the county. We think that we need to require our fishers to continue doing Hasip There's been some change in the Hasip with this Food Safety Modernization Act, and in the last couple years, we've brought in those food safety experts to update and keep current with those FISMA regulations, so that we're ahead of the curve, or keep parallel with it. And we had to expand our fish receiving tickets. When you buy a fish or whatever, it tells where it's caught and how much was paid for, or the fish buyer bought for. So we thought if we could expand those fish tickets, it would help us comply with the traceability, but also with the FISMA arm of that. We've presented these recommendations to the NESPERS Tribal Executive Committee and the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Board of Trustees in August of 2018. As of right now, they're not have been adopted for tribal law, but we thought that was a good step. The other two tribes, we haven't done that yet or whatever. We're just hoping that'll happen. In 2018, last year, University of Arkansas and the Indigenous Food and Agricultural Initiative took our tribal processing code and put it in the code that they had, the big binder. So we thought that was a good thing, instead of them reinventing the wheel, we've already did that work to do that. So that was we thought that was a real good thing. And then something that's happened, even though it hasn't been adopted into tribal law, is that we have a company that's an Indian-owned wholesale buyer that subcontracts with a big company, Pacific Seafoods, and they develop their own traceability and marking system for the fish that goes through there. So right here is one of their codes that they got, and they actually, to improve the quality of their fish that they got a list of tribal fishers that fish along the river. So that code right there, that mark right there, it has a code, and there's a little bit better picture, and it'll say, okay, tribal fisher number 6 or whatever. And then that'll follow up from when they catch it up from the wholesale buyer into the processing chain, and then even actually all the way to restaurants and stuff. So they've developed their own little story for each of these fishermen that some of the restaurants will say, and it'll say, oh, I'm an enrolled member, I've been fishing here or whatever. So they got a bio on that, and it can be brought up at restaurants and say, like, oh, we want that's a really neat thing that we know where this fish came from. And then they've been starting to request, okay, well, we want a fish from commercial fisher number X or whatever. So that's been one really good thing. And this is a tribally owned company that kind of sees where traceability and food safety is a big issue. So they went on their own and did this or whatever. And even though it's not tribal law, they require that all their fishermen be Hasip approved, and that they take the classes that we train. And they actually, to improve their quality of the fish that they're handling, they don't buy from everybody, and that's perfectly fine or whatever. So they control the quality of the fish that they got or whatever. And so they also, and I just want to give thanks to the First Nations, Seeds of Native Health, and the USDA for developing this. It's kind of an ongoing thing. I still attend quite a few FISMA trainings to try to stay abreast on that. I actually meet with the Oregon Department of Agriculture just so we know what's going on with their food safety teams, so that we're staying abreast or anything that's going on. And then final, just take some of the people that helped us with these food codes and these FISMA recommendations. Tom Zielman was our legal counsel, and Barbara Rasco is the former director of the School of Food Science at Washington State University and University of Idaho. Les Brown was a previous person that had my position that I currently got, and our cryptic staff. Thank you very much.